Hello, thank you for joining us on the news. I'm Ruth Aguilera. My sign language interpreter is Josiah Abdullahi. Let's start with the headlines. Federal government of Nigeria fixes June 17, 2026 as date for official launch of digital switch over. U.S. President Donald Trump in Beijing for high-level talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. And Nigeria is taking fresh steps to bridge the gap between research and real economic impact. Nigeria is leveraging the Nigeria-France Business Council to seek support for the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area for maximum benefit of the agreement. This was at the Council's meeting on the sidelines of the just concluded Africa-France Summit 2026 in Nairobi. State House correspondent Musbahuddin Wahab reports.
Nigerian investors, including Aliko Dangote, Abdul Samad Rabiu and their French counterparts leveraged the Africa France Summit to again strengthen their partnerships. It was the 10th meeting of the Nigeria-France Business Council. They recognized themselves as the driving force for a sustainable and protective partnerships between the two countries with exchange of investments across. Nigeria currently represents 7% of France's total trade in Africa and leading destination of French foreign direct investment in sub-Saharan Africa. Nigerian Minister of Industry, Trade and Investments, Jumoke Oduwole, said Nigeria is taking steps to lead intra-Africa trade and a more integrated continental markets, which she wants the Council to also champion. Chairman of Bua Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, recommends 3 foundations needed for the transformation of the continent to include capital, policy integration, and value addition has been demonstrated in the Nigerian cement industry.
Value addition so that all the resources that we have here in Africa will be able to add value to them. Instead of exporting everything in their raw form, we process them here, add value, and then export. If you take cocoa, for example, I keep giving this example because it's very interesting. 4 countries in Africa, in fact West Africa, Ivory Coast, Ghana, Nigeria, and Cameroon, they produce 75% of the total global supply of cocoa. This is a $200 billion industry annually, yet Africa gets only a fraction, maybe 10, probably 15% of that. So these are the areas that we need, to concentrate on.
The Council also commended the African House in France, initiated by President Emmanuel Macron to deepen trade relations between both countries.
What that does is, if completed, that is a venue where Africans will have the opportunity to dialogue, to connect, to collaborate, and also to build partnerships, across so many different sectors, industry, business, culture, innovation, in France, with the French people. So I think it's an important thing. We welcomed, the idea, and we are going to the African business community. We are going to fully support that project.
The Council proposes one more meeting ahead of the French president's visit to Nigeria, scheduled for October this year. From Nairobi, Musbah and Wahab, NC News.
Nigeria has raised concerns over the high cost and scarcity of fertilizer across Africa, a situation triggered by the ongoing crisis in the Middle East. The Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari, who is part of President Bola Tinubu's delegation to the France-Africa Summit, held meetings with the International Fund for Agricultural Development and other development partners. Again, this is Musa Baba Aliyu. Let's hear that.
Minister of Agriculture and Food Security Abubakar Kyari is among the delegates who accompanied President Bola Tinubu to the just concluded France-Africa Summit in Nairobi, Kenya. On the sidelines of the summit, the minister participated in a meeting organized by the International Fund for Agricultural Development, IFAD. The meeting focused on the challenges affecting agricultural productivity and food security across the African continent.
And unless the farmer is a focus, we will not be able to sustain our agri-food systems in Africa.
Abubakar Kyari noted that the continent is facing a severe shortage of fertilizer, which has significantly driven up the prices of the input. He said Nigeria is already developing a strategy to cushion the impacts and ensure that fertilizer is readily available and affordable to farmers. The minister called on France and other development partners to support Nigeria and other African countries in improving food security initiatives. Musa Baba Aliyu, NTA News.
All right, we have a guest joining us live from Kenya, Nairobi. He's the Senior Special Assistant to the President on Digital Engagement, Mr. Otega Ogra, to speak more on the Africa Summit, Africa Forward Summit that just ended. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Ogra.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. There were a lot of prospects for Nigeria at the just concluded Africa-France Summit with the theme Africa Forward, France, Africa, partnerships in the aspect of innovation and growth. What does this portend for Nigeria, talking about the takeaways for Nigeria?
Personally, I believe the key takeaway from President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's attendance, or Nigeria's attendance at the African Forward Summit, was placing Nigeria at the center of African conversations about investments, about trade, about infrastructure, energy, innovation, technology, the housing space, amongst other things. As I always say, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has become our diplomat in chief. He has taken the Nigerian conversation everywhere, and it's very simple. Why don't we place Nigeria in the rooms where decisions are being made, where capital is? And in doing so, I think we're beginning to see the impact of that even at home in Nigeria. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was joined in Nairobi with some of his ministers, as well as key businessmen from Nigeria. And the thing we took to the rest of Africa and Europe in setting ourselves in that conversation was to say that, see, Nigeria, the risks, reforms are underway, and we have unmatched scale that no other country in Africa can give to Europe. And that is what President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, in this sequence of trips that he has taken in the past week, is now currently in Kigali, and it's still the same conversations that is going on. In Nairobi, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu took Nigeria to the heart of Africa-Europe conversations, where a lot of private sector people were, including the France-Nigeria Business Council meetings. And in Kigali is going to take the Nigerian story to a room where you have almost 2,000 of the biggest financiers and private sector players in Africa.
And of course, we got report the president is there already talking about his participation in Kigali. You've already started mentioning what it portends for Nigeria, but fill us in more on the strategic areas, prospects for Nigeria.
So you see, the story has never been about Nairobi alone, neither is it about Kigali alone. Like I said earlier, it's about Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, taking Nigeria's reform story to rooms where capital is, to rooms where investment decisions are being shaped, to rooms where, Nigeria can tell its own story to the decision makers across the world that Nigeria is the right place to invest. We have the skill, we have the people, we have the resources, we have a system currently in Nigeria that to bring in the money, to add value addition across different sectors, and to show that indeed you do not get the kind of returns you get elsewhere in the world or in Africa than in Nigeria. And by the way, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. We have a lot of our champions of businesses in Nigeria, in the private sector, scaling across Africa, given the growth that we're experiencing in the Nigerian economy since 2023, when President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was elected. So what we're going to be seeing going forward from the conversations that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and his team would have in Kigali is that we're going to see reforms gradually turn into investment decisions in Nigeria, investment decisions gradually turn into productivity, productivity gradually turn into jobs, and jobs gradually turn into dividends for the Nigerian people at scale.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Ogra. We'll leave the conversation there, but of course, we're already seeing the windows of opportunities open for Nigeria. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right. And there you have it. Of course, you know, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is in Kigali, Rwanda, for the Africa CEO Forum 2026. And we hear he was received on arrival by Rwandan President Paul Kagame, the Ugwiro Presidential Village, where they held bilateral discussions focused on strengthening ties between Nigeria and Rwanda, including partnerships, capacity building, and regional cooperation. The president will also hold high-level bilateral meetings with top global and African business leaders, while reaffirming Nigeria's leadership role in shaping the continent's future. President Tinubu will use the summit to reaffirm Nigeria's commitment to advancing African unity, deepening regional economic cooperation, and fostering strategic partnerships to accelerate private sector-driven sustainable development across the continent. Well, at the Africa Forward Summit that was just concluded in Nairobi, a major step was taken towards reshaping Africa's financial future. African leaders and international partners have rallied behind the new African Financial Architecture for Development, an initiative led by the AFDB Group to unlock investments, lower the cost of capital, mobilize African savings, and accelerate job creation across the continent. A key breakthrough of the summit was the strong support expressed for scaling African trade and investment development insurance as the first concrete deliverable of NAFAD, a pan-African guarantee mechanism aimed at addressing one of Africa's biggest constraints, the cost and perception of risk. AFDB President Sidi Ould Tah said Africa is not capital poor, Africa is risk transformation poor. Closing the continent's guarantee gap can unlock transformative investments in infrastructure, energy, industrialization, SMEs, and jobs for millions of young Africans. The strong backing expressed by African leaders, international partners, and development finance institutions marks an important milestone towards a more coordinated, sovereign, and investment-driven Africa financial architecture. In other news, U.S. President Donald Trump has arrived in Beijing for a high-level talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, which is aimed at easing trade tensions, discussing rare earth exports, Iran conflict, Taiwan concerns, and global economic cooperation, among other prevailing issues affecting the nation. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called on the U.S. President Donald Trump to raise Russia's invasion of Ukraine during his high-stakes meetings with the Chinese leader. Let's hear details from Adelby.
Trump arrived at Beijing Capital Airport and was greeted by Chinese officials and U.S. ambassadors with ceremonial welcome, red carpet reception, and presence of Elon Musk and Jen Hong accompanying visit ceremony. Talks are expected to focus on trade disputes, rare earth export controls, Iran war diplomacy, Taiwan tensions, and extending the tariff truce between the world's two largest economies. Analysts say the summit could reshape U.S.-China relations, easing tension over trade, technology, and security, while global observers watch closely for breakthroughs on tariff and diplomacy outcomes ahead. Similarly, Zelensky made the appeal at a summit in Romania, stressing ongoing contact with Washington and expressing hope that efforts to end the Russian-Ukraine war remain central in U.S.-China discussions. The appeal highlights growing pressure from diplomacy as global powers meet, with Ukraine seeking stronger inclusion in negotiations with Washington, balances competing crises across Europe, the Middle East, and Asian Pacific region. Adobe Obiechina, NTA News.
Thought has delivered the UK government's legislative agenda at the state opening of Parliament as Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces mounting political pressure, internal labour divisions and renewed calls for leadership change. Daobi Obiechina reports.
The ceremony outlined planned reforms, including EU relations, state nationalisation, asylum policy changes and voting age reduction. While labour infighting intensifies over possible leadership challenge and resignation rumour from senior ministers. Despite political turbulence, constitutional tradition continued as Charles delivered the speech from the House of Lords in full regalia, with ancient rituals symbolising parliamentary authority and monarchy independence maintained throughout proceedings. The event highlighted contrast between historic pageantry and modern political instability as Starmer battles to maintain control of his party while pushing forward a contested legislative program amidst uncertainty over leadership future ahead. From Africa, President Macron's visit follows talks in Kenya with President William Ruto, where major investment agreements were signed, including infrastructure and energy projects, as France seeks to rebuild trust and counter growing global influence in Africa. The tour underscores France's strategic push to engage Africa through trade and development partnership, while addressing historic tensions and competing influence from global powers. Adobe Obiechina, NTA News.
African Union, United Nations and France have reaffirmed their commitment to deepen cooperation on peace, development and global governance reforms after high-level talks in Addis Ababa. The meeting in Addis Ababa on 13 May 2026, the AU Commission Chair, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres and French President Emmanuel Macron pledged stronger multilateral action on global challenges, with emphasis on African-led solutions. They called for UN Security Council reform to improve African representation and reaffirm support for AU-UN cooperation on peace and security, including sustainable financing for African peace operations under the UN resolution. The leaders reviewed conflicts in the DRC, Sudan, the Horn of Africa, the Sahel, urging coordinated diplomatic efforts and inclusive peace processes. The meeting agreed to mobilize funding for the African Union Peace Fund and reaffirm commitment to development priorities under Agenda 2063 and the UN 2030 Agenda, including infrastructure, jobs and digital growth. Both sides reinforced water security, cooperation and described the AU-UN partnership as a model of global multilateralism, with the next conference set for 2027 in New York. The federal government of Nigeria has fixed June 17, 2026 as a date for the official launch of digital switchover. That is, the migration from analog to digital signals in Nigeria. The Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, during a facility tour at the Nigerian Communications Satellite Limited, NIGCOMSAT, says Nigeria is set to play major impact in global digital economy. Let's hear from Salihu Abdullahi Gwanara.
Better late than never. This best described Nigeria's journey to digital switchover, DSO haven't skipped the original 2015 global migration deadline. Despite the delays and technical challenges, the renewed commitment by the current administration has paved the way towards achieving improved television broadcasting quality, increased digital broadcasting coverage, growth in local content production, as well as better utilization of broadcast spectrum.
We're all over Nigeria and beyond. And now we are updating the list of channels. We're going to have 100 channels by the day of launch, and even more, because more content producers are talking to us.
It's important that for us the service is reliable. It is important for us that the service delivery is perfect and the technology is continuous.
As the coordinator of digital switchover, the Minister of Information and National Orientation inspected digital facilities at the Direct-to-Home Center at the Nigerian Communications Satellite premises, alongside heads of agencies that are driving the process.
For many years, Nigerians have been grappling with this idea of the DSO, the digital switchover. In other words, moving our transmissions from the analog to the digital. Now this has happened and is ready to be commissioned by the 17th of June this year. We've gone around the facilities. We have already seen that many of the channels have already been unbundled here. This is going to bring a lot of advantages to all the broadcasters, the viewers, and everybody, the advertisers. The collaboration between NICOMSAT and NBC, and the bigger collaboration between the Ministry of Communication and the Ministry of Information and National Orientation is making this to happen. And we thank President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for providing all the resources that we require for us to deliver this to Nigerians.
Come June 17, 2026, Nigerian communication satellite will deliver improved picture and sound quality, increase the number of television channels, promote local television content, and create more jobs in broadcasting and technology to boost economic growth through digital economy. In Abuja, Salihu Abdullah Higuanara, NTA News.
Nigeria is taking fresh steps to bridge the gap between research and real economic impact as government, development partners and industry leaders push for the operationalization of a National Research and Innovation Fund. The activation of the new fund is aimed at driving industrialization, job creation, local manufacturing under the Renewed Hope agenda. Justin Bem reports.
This document for you.
A major push to reposition Nigeria's science and innovation system took center stage at a three-day national consultation on the Renewed Hope agenda and the future of research funding. The meeting, backed by the Federal Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, UNESCO and development partners under the Sankore project, focused on closing the long-standing gap between research outputs and real-world impact. At the heart of the discussions is the planned National Research and Innovation Development Fund, designed to move science from the laboratory to the market. The Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Kingsley Ude, announced Federal Executive Council approval for the fund.
One of the things that we must do as we make input in the National Research and Innovation Development Fund bill is to ensure that we give pride of place to commercialization of research and innovation outcomes.
UNESCO reaffirmed its support, noting that while Nigeria has strong science and technology frameworks, more work is needed to translate policies into measurable economic impact.
The fund will present a strategic opportunity to address the long-standing challenge of inadequate, fragmented funding of research and innovation in Nigeria.
The consultation is expected to produce actionable strategies to drive innovation, boost commercialization, and accelerate Nigeria's shift toward a knowledge-driven economy. Justin Bem, NTA News.
The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has sentenced a former Minister of Power, Sali Mamman, to 11 consecutive terms of 7 years imprisonment each for his involvement in embezzling over 33 billion naira while in office. Judiciary correspondent Justin Ayembe reports.
Salim Mamman was appointed as the Minister of Power during the last administration and relieved of his appointment in 2021. He was arraigned before the Federal High Court Abuja by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission for embezzling 33.8 billion naira of government funds while in office as a minister. The court, having found him guilty previous week, proceeded to sentence him to jail for the crime. Though he was absent in court, Justice James Omotosho on counts 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12 sentenced the convict to 7 years imprisonment. The sentencing is to run consecutively and not concurrently. The court ordered security agencies to arrest the convict wherever he may be found so that he can serve his term of imprisonment. Also, the various sums of foreign and local currencies recovered from him and properties acquired through fraud are to be forfeited to the federal government. In Abuja, Austin Anyebe, NTA News.
The significance of sports tourism in driving national development, as well as the need for stronger collaboration among critical sectors, came into focus at the maiden edition of the National Sports Tourism Conference and Exhibition held in Abuja. The conference brought together key stakeholders in the sports tourism industry, including the Director General of the Nigerian Television Authority, Salihu Abdulhamid Dembos, who delivered a paper on the growth and influence of sports broadcasting in Nigeria.
The maiden edition of the National Sports Tourism Conference and Exhibition, NASTOS, organized by Ringo Sports Club, brought together stakeholders from government, media and the private sector, with a team leveraging the intersection of multi-sectoral MDAs to promote sports tourism in Nigeria. The conference brought together industry experts to explore how sports tourism can drive national development. Convener and chairman of the National Organizing Committee, Ahmed Mohamed Sule, noted that the initiative is designed to deepen partnerships and showcase Nigeria's sports tourism potential.
Tourism and sports, they help each other to grow. And once that happens, the economy becomes great.
Director General of the Nigeria Television Authority, Salihu Abdulhamid Dembos, represented by the General Manager of NTA Sports 24, Kayode Adeniyi, presented a paper titled Broadcasting the Thrills, NTA